And then in 1968, we got some German civil servants coming into the base from the military in Germany, and it was like Edwards Air Force Base in Germany coming to Patterson Air Force Base. So this one fellow, he worked in my office. He says, "Mr. Schumacher, have you ever been back to the old country?" And I let him have it with all I knew. And his chin kind of dropped down. He said, "Well, the young people are not like the old people you were associated with during World War II."
Sure.
So over I made our first trip back in 1970. And sure enough, we enjoyed the trip. Found the young people to be very accommodating. Took us into our homes and kept us overnight and things like that. And so I said, okay, I had to apologize, and I told them that I had to change my mind.
Yeah.
So we made probably 12 trips about that.
That's crazy. It must have been tough that first time, though, just going back there.
Well, the first time I was a little bit apprehensive about it. The buildings hadn't all been restored, so you could drive down the country, and the first thing I noticed was a house that had been reconstructed of whatever was laying around, different size windows, a different size color tile on the roof, and especially with the siding and things like that. By the time the late 70s rolled around, they'd all recovered these houses, and you couldn't even tell the war had taken place. But you peel all the stuff off, and you see more holes and everything else.
Sure.
But I went back to Bastogne a couple of times to do some research, and from Bastogne, Hitler intended to drive a wedge to Antwerp. And I've driven from Bastogne to Antwerp. He didn't get 20 miles. I said, what a waste.
Yeah.
Thousands of Americans killed, and so many Germans killed, and so on and so forth. And
Chocolate
to make
cake
20
and
miles.
beer.
And why the General Command didn't lay the weapons down and say it's over, it's a hell of a me. But they did.
Yeah, that's dedication.
So then I crossed the bridge, across the Rhine River on the bridge over Megan. The second day after the bridge was discovered or intact, and 11 days later it collapsed in the river from fatigue. But I think that probably shortened the war 2 months. Once we got over the Rhine River, we didn't have much resistance.
Sure.
We had very few firefights. I ended up on the Elbe River because that was as far as we were allowed to go. The Russians were on the other side, so about the last few days in April until the war was declared ended, the Russians would come down that side, and we'd go to the river about 10:30 in the morning, 2:30 in the afternoon, wave and yell at each other. I couldn't understand what they said.
I was just going to say.
These Russians over there waving at us, and we're up there on this cliff waving at them, and then we did that for every day for about a week and a half.
That must have been such an experience after
Yeah.
war to be doing that. What a change.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's crazy. So the first time you went back to Germany, did you go back to Remagen or any of these places? Yeah, the very first time.
We went back to the Hürtgen Forest. The Hürtgen Forest is a strip of forest along the German-Belgian border from Aachen down to Luxembourg.
Okay.
Now, the forest is in Belgium, but it calls something Belgium. But from here to the Rhine River, there's about 40 miles of nothing but dense forest and rolling hills, from Aachen south. And that was the Battle of the Bulge. That was the original Hürtgen Forest. And then, when the Battle of the Bulge, we were pulled back into Belgium, and we were the British and the Canadians and the Free French, and then the 1st Infantry Division, the 9th Infantry Division, and then a couple more, then patting down here around Koblenz. So it went like a football line.
Yeah.
Somebody got ahead, they had to slow down until these other guys caught up because it jiggled around like that. So, and then after we were pulled back almost to Malmedy. I was on the north edge of Malmedy, Belgium. They had to take that Hürtgen Forest again, so it was taken twice. We lost a lot of casualties both times.
Jeez.
But when they softened up the area of the Ruhr River and the Ruhr River on the close to the Cologne Plain and Rhine River. They started artillery firing about 3:30 a.m. and it was relentless until about 7 p.m. and then they kind of slowed down. And I waited that day across there. Every ditch had water from knee deep to this way.
Oh my goodness!
They hold a rifle up like that and waited across there. And one time I laid down on a bank and let all the water drain out of my shoes. Shoe full of water.
Oh my goodness!
I thought
Not ideal conditions, right?
Well, these are tales now. They're funny right now to me. But at the time, you try to walk across all these holes are filled with water. If you stepped in one, you got drenched. So anyway,
Oh my goodness!
that for about 10 or 15 miles of the Ruhr River and the Ruhr River, or the Rhine River, we were up and down all the time. You fall in one of these holes, you climb out of it.
How many, and you guys got to the Ruhr in January or February?
The Ruhr?
Yeah.
The Ruhr was a small river. It's where they had the dam, the dam at Schmidt.
Schwimmerhamel? The Schwimmerhamel Dam?
Yep.
Yep.
And the Ruhr River then was closer. It was where all the industry, the steel,
Yeah,
the coal
pocket,
mines.
right?
Yeah.
How long did it take to resolve that then?
Well, I think we were about a week getting to the Rhine River. The first town on the Rhine River that we were in, I was in, Bad Godesberg. And that was they had an army hospital there. Germans had an army hospital with British and American airmen that were shot down and injured.
Yeah, POW.
And then we got the message that down here about 10 miles at
Remagen, right?
Remagen, the bridge was found. So we made a right turn and marched one day down there and then crossed it on the second day. But it probably took me 5 minutes to get across the bridge, but it seemed like half a day. I was on the left-hand side of the bridge, and then the other line of troops on the right-hand side of the bridge, and then the vehicles were in the middle. Well, these were damaged so bad that they brought in these thick iron plates, like plywood sheets, and laid them down for the vehicles to go over. So as I get over here, 3 times a German Stuka bomber came over, but he missed the bridge, and he hit the water, and he looked good muddy water all over.
Oh my goodness!
I didn't have my glasses back in those days, but I would have been able to see him. But I got so drenched with this muddy water coming up out there. But then when we got across, there's a big cliff over here on this side. So we had to turn left and go to Erpel and go up, find a gully.
The train tunnel was on the
Train tunnel is
east side, right?
east side.
Yeah, right.
And there's a military policeman there would not let us go in there, even though I asked to go in there. Told him he wouldn't let us go in. And the people on the right had to walk down about a half mile to Hanif, and then they found a gully, and we made on top about a mile and a half, maybe from the edge of this cliff. This was 200 feet high, and straight up and down, like El Capitan in California.
Yeah, you can see that.
But once we got past that,
But
it was pretty well over.
the dam, that Schwimmerhamel Dam, is west of Remagen, right?
Remagen was where the bridge was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the dam that you guys were trying
Oh,
to
the
protect
dam.
right?
Well, that was back here.
Yeah, that was west, right?
It was
Back toward Belgium.
it was close to Aachen. Schmidt is about probably if you draw a line, maybe about 10 miles from Aachen, something like that. And that dam changed hands several times until the Germans blew the pistols. And
Weren't they going to blow it though?
well, I think the Americans were going to save it, but
Yeah, that's what I thought.
the 1st Infantry Division captured it one or twice, and then they had to give it up again. But the Germans were the ones that blew the pistols.
Yeah, I thought that was part of the strategy to get the Americans downstream and blow that dam, right?
Well, it was good delaying action because it let a lot of water out. And
Did you ever get to Aachen then?
oh yeah, I've been down there. Yeah.
Did they save that church there?
I don't.
The church
Well, I wasn't there during the war, but your mother and I were there in 1970, and that's Charlemagne's church.
I know.
There was a seat.
That's the oldest city in Germany.
There was a seat there for Charlemagne, and had a little curtain around it. You know, I guess when he's not there, they close the curtain. When he's there, they open the curtain.
Crazy.
But it is the oldest. Yeah, it is the
That's
oldest
the oldest city in Germany.
Yeah.
Amazing.
What I wish I could. I was trying to
But
watch
Ansbach has a church that was started in 738. But you go there now, and the only thing they have are pieces of the old church hanging inside, like the altar and some of the statuary and things like that. It's a new modern church. Everybody wanted me to take pictures of it. In fact, maybe there's a log cabin. It's a regular church now. But inside is full of this ancient stuff.
Yeah. That's amazing. So how far east did you get? Was it
Up to the Elbe River
Elbe?
at Dessau. Now, Dessau is about 15 or 20 miles north of Leipzig.
And the Russians didn't seem hostile. They were happy to see you guys.
That was a friendly house. The ones that were, let me tell you about the Russians. General Patton wanted to capture Berlin in the worst way. But with the Russians, what was standing was knocked down, and what was walking was killed. And so they burned the city and destroyed it. And that was really unnecessary. If Churchill and Eisenhower had been smart, they said, "You guys stay on the eastern side of the city, and we'll take it."
Save half of it.
And that's the reason. After that, we had the Cold War, and the 1 year they had the whole coal in from Britain.
I think the Russians were pretty mad,
Yeah.
though, weren't they?
Well, your brother and I in 1970 got on the road towards the checkpoint to go into Berlin,
Yeah.
and I turned on the radio, and they said there's a 4-hour delay getting into the checkpoint. And I told Ellen, we're going to leave in 2 days, and my name is Schumacher, and I can't afford, so we did a U-turn and left. But
Stay out of these
I don't know how long it would take to get in there. But they would take your passport and disappear. And you're waiting, waiting.
Yikes.
Good stuff. Oh my God.
So how long after the war ended did you end up staying in Germany?
Okay. Let me go back to the ending of the war.
Yeah.
About the 1st of June, they began sending people home. But I didn't have enough points to come home because I didn't have a family member killed in either the Pacific and I wasn't married.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't have enough points. And I was going to process to Marseille and get on a boat and go directly to Japan in October. Well, I found out the landing in October is the 23rd of October. And when I was almost to the French border, when the Americans dropped the first atomic bomb, and they stopped us. We stayed there about 10 days, and then the war was declared ended, and then I came back to Bavaria. I got back to Bavaria roughly the early part of July, and I stayed there until November. And that's when I broke my leg, obviously.
Oh, sure.
I would probably stayed as cadre maybe for a year, because they were looking for somebody had some education, could make blueprints, draw drawings, and restoration for buildings and things like that.
Do some of the picking up.
Yeah, and I considered that until I broke my leg, and I said, well, it's all over for me because
If you can't move, you
get
can't
that
move.
off.
Yeah.
But one of the highlights after the war, in the middle of June, they had the change of command ceremony. Eisenhower had retired. General Patton now became commander of all the forces in Europe, and I attended that parade. And so,
Wow. So they were both there for that change of command. Holy fuck, that's cool.
They took us to the big air base in Monching, Germany, which is like Edwards Air Force Base. And he got on one end of the runway, and they drove down there. And I was probably 200 feet from him when he got right in front of me, and they disappeared. So I said, I saw Gerald Patton for 10 minutes, for 10 seconds. Rather.
Check that off the list.
Yeah, but I did see Gerald. Somebody asked me if I ever saw Gerald Patton. I said, yep.
He didn't
Sure
stay
did.
in command too long, though, did he? They took him out of
Got
command.
killed in July.
Yeah.
And it's very mysterious because what they said was that the two tech sergeants got drunk and stole a vehicle, truck.
Yeah.
And they ran a stoplight, I guess, and hit his vehicle. So there's always been a question whether this was a put-up job by somebody, you know, who wanted to get rid of him.
Interesting.
Ooh, that's dirty. That's dirty. Oh my God.
I think the best account I ever read was Bill O'Reilly's account, killing Patton. However, after he got mixed up with this latest accident, I don't read no more of Bill O'Reilly's books.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's persona non grata in my category.
So when you came back, was there any debriefing process that you had to go through at that time, or did you just heal and then when you came back from Germany?
Well, when I came back from Germany, I knew I was going to be discharged, so I landed in New York City. And this corporal came in and said, "We're going to send you to Madigan." Now, Madigan is the big hospital out of Fort Worth, Washington. And I looked at him and I said, "You know, I'm going to go out. You'll send me out there. I'm going to get a furlough. You'll send me to Indiana for a furlough. You're going to let me take me back to Washington, and then pay my way back to Indiana when I get discharged." I said, "Don't sound good. Can you find something closer?" 2 days later, he came and said, "Well, how about Memphis?" I said, "That's great because that's a 300-mile Greyhound bus ride home when I get a furlough."
I realized if you hadn't argued successfully, you wouldn't be.
Right.
After that, all hell broke loose.
Did not go the way you planned. Huh?
After that, all hell broke loose. There's one of the other GIs from another division. I would get a weekend pass and go down to Memphis and stay off base. Well, anyway, he had been dating a student nurse. He was married. He lived in Ohio, and I thought this was bad. This is bad enough, but he said that this young lady says she has a friend that I should meet. I said, "Oh, well,
Yeah, sure.
set up a dinner date downtown." I go, "Yeah." Well, guess what showed up? She charmed the daylights out of me. So we're sitting around the table, and the photographer comes in and he says, "Well, I'm going to take your picture." And so he said, "You want to get on the outside of the table, you want to get real close together." And the closer I got to that young lady, the more beautiful she got.
That's true.
And then, from then on, it was iffy. I had 1 year of college to finish, and so I told her, I don't think I could have a marriage and college at the same time.
Right.
So we probably saw each other once or twice a year for 2 years until I graduated and got a job. The first Christmas in 1946, I wrote about, in the letter that after Elle passed away, I wrote about meeting her. I wrote her and told her, if you could come here a few days. She'd graduated and was working at the hospital there in Memphis. I said, if you could get a few days off and want to come to Indiana to meet the family, we'll pick you up in Evansville and so on and so forth. Well, she came out, and 2 days before Christmas, and we went to church together, the whole family went to church together on Christmas Eve. She had this smartly dressed suit, a little hat with a little veil across here, you know, and pumps.
How'd she get up to Evansville?
She came to the down bus up to Evansville.
She took a bus from Memphis to Evansville?
Yeah, it was
Back in the
about,
day,
I think
Different
about an
time.
8-hour ride that we were
Different
there.
time.
And she charmed my father too. We go to the Christmas Eve service, and sitting beside me, and we began, at the end they always sing 3 or 4 Christmas songs, turn the lights down and light up the Christmas tree. Well, back in those days they had candles on it, so they started lighting this Christmas tree, and then all once they turned all the lights off, you see nothing but this Christmas tree on it. I was just singing these hymns without reading them in the book, and I didn't know them. So I'm listening to her sing it, and I said, you know, this she got some smarts to her. And then I graduated in November of 47, and I took a job on the East Coast. The first offer I got.
Virginia? Was that how you got to Virginia?
Yeah, that's how I got to Virginia. Took the first offer I got, and she rode the train out in January. We got engaged, and then we got married. I was engaged in January of 48, and we got married in June of 48. So I go into my boss, and I said, you know, I'd like to get married, but I don't have any annual leave. He says, when do you want to have your wedding? I told him sometime in the last part of June. He says, plan it, take care of it, we'll work on leave and stuff later. So I borrowed leave to go to get married and to take to get a honeymoon and so forth. So the last day on our way to back to Virginia, we stopped in Indiana. My mother had all the relatives there one evening for a reunion, so to speak. And my oldest uncle from Joseph Schumacher's family was real Dutchy. And he couldn't remember Elden's name. He says, he always called her little girl. And he would talk with her, and once in a while he'd say, little girl, where do you live? And so forth. And so I walked through, I let the two of them get acquainted.
Yeah.
But the family took her over real well. You know. And then we spent 4 years in Virginia, and then we moved to Ohio.
Yeah, poor old Uncle Kirby was born in Virginia.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Interesting.
He wasn't. Kirby wasn't born in Virginia.
Wasn't Kirby born in Virginia?
No, because he was at Children's Hospital.
What's that?
Kirby wasn't born in Virginia, was he?
No, Kirby wasn't born in Virginia.
You're wrong.
We moved to Ohio in 1951, and he was supposed to be born in, I think it was May. I was going to go to summer school, one of the summer quarters.
Well, that explains those
I think
pictures,
it was May, and we're going to start school in June. And he was born in September. We'd taken a ride up to Delaware on a Sunday afternoon because we didn't know the area, so we got acquainted. And we stopped in Delaware, and there was a fast food restaurant over here, and the driveway sloped down this way, and this guy let his car run into her door. And so the next day Kirby was born.
Crazy.
I think he was born about a month premature because he was 3 pounds 12 ounces, and they kept him in the hospital for about a month until he was 5.5 pounds before they were released him.
That's so.
But anyway,
Holy buckets.
during the war, and I hate to say this, but there was one day we were being hit with a serious artillery barrage, and I felt I couldn't move, so I laid my head down, and I didn't have chin strap because we didn't wear chin straps on a SEAL helmet. I grabbed the helmet like that so it wouldn't be blown off my head, and I spoke to God seriously about that time. As I say, I had an epiphany, and I survived that one. But what I didn't know was there was a big shell that went off about 50 feet from me, and it blew dirt all over me. After I got up, I shook the dirt off. But there was one landed real close to me. It was a dud. And I learned in Schindler's List that those Jewish people would fix the ammunition so it was defective. It would go off.
Yeah.
And this one landed about where the fireplace was. So if that one had gone off, I'm not sure I would have made it. It was a huge. But in Schindler's List now, if you go to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. and look at the book, I think it's number 720, is Abraham Schumacher. I tell my mother, he's got to come from your side of the family because my grandpa, Willie Schumacher, if any in the family ever looked Jewish, he did. He did.
That's entirely possible. I mean, you
But
got 1,000 years worth of
Well,
Germanic
since
history.
he's on Schindler's List, I figured that he must have been picked up as a Jew.
Yeah.
That's
Must have been.
entirely possible.
But I walked beside the fence of the concentration camp in Dornhausen. It was small, about 2 city blocks, but it was bad. And I still hear people say it didn't happen. And I tell them it did, and then I have to walk away because it's an argument, you know.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, there was a trench laying there. They're about 50 feet long. I think there probably were 3 dozen bodies in it, laying up there like cordwood, with about another dozen and a half that died had not been put down in there yet. The German people all ran away and left the people locked up in the gate. So I handed this fellow, that was hanging there on the fence, with his chocolate bars. We had this high-powered chocolate bar with 3 sections in it. I handed him one, and later on I said, you know, you made a mistake. They couldn't even keep water down.
Right,
If he took a
which
bite
is
of that, it
chocolate.
was going to come right back up again. But I didn't know that at the time, so. But I do regret that. But I may have put him through some misery. But about a few hours, 3 or 4 hours later, there was a group from the 9th Infantry medics came in the gate and cleaned it up, you know, and took the, I call them patients, back and had them treated like they're supposed to be treated.
Yeah.
But his legs wasn't as big as my arm here, and I had small arms. And his face was so gaunt, like he hadn't anything to eat for a long time. And that is what I blame the Germans for. I said, this was absolutely inhumane. And yet, well, the SS troops, I think, killed as many gypsies as Jews.
Sure.
Yeah, people with Down syndrome and retarded folks. And
Oh, by the way,
gypsies.
there's a cemetery right off the Rhine River, probably west of Wiesbaden, 30 or 40 miles. It probably has 1,000 kids' graves. Down syndrome children, or any child born that wasn't German, they let them starve to death. And they put them up there in the cemetery. And that's another thing that I never have understood why the German people have this.
It's awful.
But in the hundreds and hundreds of prisoners that came through, I had several dozen that had his helmet in his arm, a white handkerchief in his hand. He said, in German, he said, "Ich hab genug," or he'd say, "Ich bin müde," which means I've had enough. And he looked at me straight in the eye and he said, "I've had enough."
I just stopped.
And when you think about this now,
Wow. But yeah, I mean, the contagion that Hitler created has happened other places and times too. May not be quite as vivid, you know, but it happens. It's not a German thing, you know. You get a bunch of people together that are kind of coerced emotionally into following a crazy leader. They'll do what they have to do to survive. German people did what they did to have to survive. Just cost a lot of Jewish and Polish and Gypsy lives.
Ellen asked, there were several German war brides in the Beaver Creek area, in Kettering too. And Ellen asked him one time, they worked in the Trinity home, in that retirement home, and asked him that. And they said, well, we had shoes, we had clothing, we had uniforms, and we went to school, and my father was given a good job, and so on and so forth, and we didn't complain.
Right.
We did not complain about that. But historically, the Germans at that time went through exactly what the Americans went through in 1928 to 37 or 38, something like that. And really, the World War II pulled the Americans out of their refugee quickly. Let me tell you, when 1940 rolled around, jobs came back, manufacturing came back, and then when the Japanese dropped their bombs at Pearl Harbor, all these huge efforts were put together to win the war. Otherwise, there were isolationists. One of them was a senator from Michigan, I believe, and he said, well, there's 4,000 miles of ocean out there. Why would we care what happens in Europe? Mm-hmm. And that was a typical attitude until the Japanese bombed Harbor.
Well, unless you had some pretty powerful people in America that were aligned with the Hitler regime, like Charles Lindbergh. He was basically supportive of Hitler, thinking that he was a better option than some of the other things that were going on. You can't interpret that unless you have the context of history.
Mm-hmm.
It was 1935.
You'd be surprised that the Germans in Linville, Indiana, in Boyd County, where we live, thought highly of Hitler.
Yeah. Well, that was my question. I always wondered why there were so many German Americans, right? Why didn't they get interred? Because the Japanese went to prison camps in 41. Holy cow! As soon after December 41, the Japanese were interred. The Germans, no.
I'm a second generation American, and by rights, if they'd interred the Germans, I might have been Jack, and I might have been in that group.
True that. Yeah. No, I think it's clearly because Japanese people look different than German people.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the only way to interpret it.
Well, in a way, I think interring those Japanese in California, which were truck farmers and things like, they were beneficial. Yeah. And really, they should have been watched.
Yeah,
they shouldn't have the land taken away from them.
No. They lost all their assets. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. It